If you work on or around a growth team, you've probably seen this story. It's been going mega viral recently. For about a 10-month period, Anthropic's entire performance marketing department was one non-technical guy leveraging Claude Code, which is wild. And the story essentially split the growth community into two camps. One says, look, this is a glimpse into the future. AI is going to replace entire marketing and growth departments. The other said, hey, this is pretty cool, but maybe not a big deal. Early stage teams have always been run lean. This is just a natural evolution of the technology available to do our job. The 5 shifts that I'm going to walk you through are the 5 places where the playbooks and the operating systems are changing. Each one has got a who stuck side and a who does it well side. And by the end of this video, you'll have a pretty clear read on which side you're on right now and what you might need to change to get on the other one. So let's get into it. Now, the first shift is all about how growth marketers view their own value. Many of them measure themselves based on their output and their accomplishments. How much stuff did they do? How many campaigns did they launch? How many landing pages did they test? How many ad creatives did they upload? How many marketing operations programs did they add segmentation to? How many website pages did they optimize for CRO? That kind of stuff. And many growth marketers are used to putting this kind of stuff when they do their self-evaluations for their performance reviews. There's good reason that we view this as part of our value because working growth is all about figuring out what stuff works to increase conversion and growth rates. And the truth is that most experiments aren't going to move the needle for the business in a meaningful way. We're lucky, maybe 1 out of every 3 experiments will be a winner. And so to drive real impact and growth, you have to try a lot of stuff. Getting a lot of shots on net is really important for us. And so to incentivize that, some teams started setting goals around the number of volume, the number of experiments shipped in a time period, which I think incentivized the right behavior. But unfortunately, what ended up happening is that to hit those internal goals and OKRs, teams started shipping a lot of small and insignificant tests to hit those goals. Activity went up, but business impact didn't really change. And I don't mean to be preachy here. I'm guilty of this too. When I first got into growth and I started scaling my team, I didn't always know the most impactful work. And so I prioritized speed and execution too. I did a lot of small stuff. I prioritized a lot of button copy, color changes, headline changes, different images, stuff like that. I danced around a lot of the big changes because I didn't know what to do and they were way harder to execute. And I didn't think I wanted to spend the political capital to advocate for the resources that I need because of those 2 reasons. And what has changed recently is that anyone who's starting to get savvy with these tools can now ship hundreds of experiments a quarter now. The volume has stopped being a differentiator and something that's really valuable. So there's a little bit of a divide here. The growth marketer who still measures their value based on their output and the things that they've shipped, the volume of stuff, is the one who's at risk to getting stuck here. Their resumes are probably going to look like everyone else's where they're talking about the volume of things that they've tried because everybody's going to be doing that. The growth marketer who's going to pull ahead in this new world is the person who's going to be able to point to a small number of things that they prioritized that really mattered. They're going to be able to explain why they picked those things in the first place and the impact on the business that it had. And here's where I'm going to plant my flag because I think that a lot of the growth content that I'm seeing online is maybe going to disagree with this. But the most valuable skill moving forward in growth marketing right now is the skill of being able to figure out what is the most high leverage stuff for us to be testing and why. And that's a shift from could we test this to should we test this? Different fundamental question. Okay, so that first shift is all about how you value yourself and your skill set. The second is about something a little bit more fundamental, which is your relationship to AI in the first place. Now, a lot of the growth marketers I get to chat with have spent the last 18 months keeping AI at an arm's length. And for a while, it felt like this was for a few reasons. I think what we saw was a lot of hype that outpaced the technology and the value that we could get from it. And the second reason, or one of the other reasons, that we just couldn't keep up with the pace of change. Well, researching all these new tools and still hitting our short and medium term goals that were right in front of us. There's just way too many things to do. And with the economy slowing down a little bit and our goals increasing, there was just a lot of tension there. And I think if we're being really honest, a lot of the growth community was a little nervous that we had heard this rhetoric. It was going to come for our jobs. And why in the world would you welcome something in with open arms that's likely going to replace you? So I think there was a little bit of that feeling as well. And I'll be honest, that was me for a little while too. I think the first wave of AI marketing tools and workflows and automations and agents weren't that impressive. The output was quick, but the quality was just okay. And at that time, we didn't have as many of the MCPs and the integrations available to us. And that hype to substance ratio was bad. So I dabbled, but I didn't really commit. I didn't massively change my workflows. And I basically saw the same thing with a lot of my clients. Most of them had internal OKRs to get them to use more AI from their executives, but they weren't really sure where to apply it. And so a lot of them were just doing things with AI that were just different ways of getting to the same place, but not truly unlocking more leverage. But recently that's changed. And I'm starting to see some of my coaching clients pull ahead from their peers. and they have the same limited budget and limited resources as everybody else, but they're more curious. They're more interested in trying to figure out some of these workflows and trying to figure out where the leverage lies. I'll share a quick story to illustrate this from one of my clients. Let's call him James. James is the head of growth marketing at a B2C startup. He's a super smart guy, extremely curious, and just like I was saying, had goals to use more AI with himself and within his team. And he said that at that time, AI felt like the boogeyman. It was something he was a little scared of. He was super cautious of, something to keep at arm's length that he didn't quite understand, that felt a little bit spooky. And then a few months ago, again, he leaned in, started building stuff. He hooked up all of his MCPs in a Claude Code, built his first couple agents. And what he told me earlier this week on a call, this is almost word for word, he said, dude, I'm going crazy with AI. I'm having so much fun. He said Claude Code has been like the ultimate unlock. He said, I've hooked up all of my, disconnected tools and data sources into this one hive mind. He said, it feels like I have the world at my fingertips. And it's the most empowering thing I've ever felt at work. He took it a step further. He said, it's even improved my mental health because he said for a long time, it felt like the boogeyman, but leaning into it has helped my outlook on the future. And this is a senior marketing leader sharing that his mental health at work got better because he leaned way into AI instead of kind of fighting against it. So I think that's a good example of the divide. So the growth marketer who's waiting for someone else to figure out these playbooks, they're waiting for the right tool, the right framework, the right validated approach from someone else, that person is most at risk here. Because every day that you wait is another day that you're missing out on some of these reps. And if we compare that to the growth marketer who's pulling ahead, they're already in the lab, they're building stuff, they're learning by doing, they're connecting things, even though this stuff is messy and confusing. And so curiosity is going to be one of the most defensible skills. And if you're not sure where to get started here, pick one part of your existing workflow or operating system, something you find yourself doing on a weekly basis, and then go build a version of it using Claude Code or Cursor or Bolt, whatever your tool of choice is. Don't try to be perfect. Just get the first version of it out. And the skill that you'll be building here is the skill to think in workflows, prompts, skills, commands, and you only get to build that skill set by getting very curious and putting in the reps. It's important. Okay, so curiosity is the entry point, but this third shift is about what that curiosity actually opens up, which is that one person can now cover way more surface area than ever before. Because in my mind, the real story here isn't about AI replacing growth marketers and growth marketing teams. It's going to be about how one growth marketer can do so much on their own now, which is essentially this early stage Anthropic story. And I've got another client, Francis, who's a perfect example of this. The head of growth at a very large, popular consumer AI startup, and recently lost his dedicated growth engineer. And the engineer got pulled back to kind of building some of the core product stuff. So my client was unsure what to do and basically just leaned in and got curious and tried to figure out if he could start doing this himself. So he connected his MCPs to Snowflake and to the company's code base. He got all that stuff hooked up to Claude Code. And now when he wants to test something, Claude understands which data to pull. It can help him run the analysis, help him calculate statistical significance, and then even write the code so that he can ship the experiment and get it live. And last month, he ran a test that defaulted some of their users to one model instead of another in their onboarding flow. It resulted in a 20% lift in revenue from the test cohort. He shipped it solo. Claude did what used to be 3 people's jobs. Incredible surface area. And the thing that I just also want to make sure that I highlight here is that he ran that experiment. AI helped him ship it. But the hypothesis, the design, the interpretation of the data, all that came from him. And I see the same thing in my own work. A few years ago, if I wanted a custom dashboard, I'd have to submit a ticket to the data analyst. I'd have to wait a couple weeks for them to work through their sprint cycle. I'd have to meet with them a couple times to talk about the formatting and what I was looking for and how I was going to use it. Now it takes 3 minutes and a couple of prompts. I've got 10x more dashboards than I did 2 years ago because the cost of making one and the surface area that I can cover has totally changed. And so here's the shift. The growth marketer that used to only be valuable because they were an expert or a specialist in one thing, the Google Ads person or the lifecycle email person or the website optimization person, I think that past is gone. And the growth marketer who's becoming more valuable is the one who can absorb adjacent work because the surface area that they're able to cover and the cost of execution has totally decreased. So now one person can do the experiment design and the data pull and the code and the read on the analysis. And so we're even starting to see a little bit of some directors and a few VPs who have no direct reports that are both setting up the strategy and owning a lot of the execution. So strategy is the real work here. Execution is the part that AI can help you with. And I've seen some folks kind of flip this script where they'll ask AI for the strategy. They'll like delegate the strategy to the AI and then they go off and do the work. But in my experience, I have not seen that to be as effective yet. So if curiosity gets you in the door and you're able to cover more surface area, this next shift is about something more specific, which is how growth marketers actually add value when they walk into the room. And this is the question that I'm starting to get from more heads of growth on almost every coaching call right now. They're starting to think about who on my team is actually safe in this new world and who isn't. And I'm starting to see a little bit of a pattern here because the folks who are most at risk on their teams are the ones who walk into every room with a tactical idea instead of understanding the business problem. Their starting point is, hey, what should we do? What should we ship? I'm using AI. I can do more stuff. What should we do? Instead of thinking about like, what does the business really need here? And again, when execution was the hardest part, that gap was hidden. We were a little bit protected. You could be a campaign first thinker or a tactical thinker, and you could still be very productive and very valuable because everything took a long time to create. And that execution cycle kind of covered any of the missing strategic muscle. But now anybody can ship stuff in 20 minutes. And so that slow execution cycle, that's not cutting it anymore. The delta is more visible. I'll share a quick story about one of my other clients. Let's go back to James for a second. James had actually been working through this with their team. Their team is executing like bonkers, and they're thinking in terms of sprint cycles and product feature releases. And they don't often have a chance to take a step back and think about what is the most important work for us to be doing and how does it impact the business and how can we help the business hit its goals and then run campaigns on that. So that's what I think the future looks like. The growth marketer who's able to walk into the room, understanding the business problem and then working backwards into the tactic and into the campaign will be way more valuable than they were a year or two ago. And the growth marketer who walks in with a tactic, looking for a reason to do the tactic, is going to have some competition from a $20 a month subscription fee. So the value isn't just running the campaign anymore, it's knowing which campaign to run to help the business. So this week, if you're not sure what to do, before you propose your next thing, campaign, test, program, whatever it is, write down one sentence. What's the business problem that this solves? How would I know if this worked? And if you can't write that down, you don't know yet. Don't ship it. Figure out the business problem first, then jump into the tactical stuff afterwards. All right, here's the last shift, and in some ways, the biggest, because the first four were all about you as an individual growth marketer and growth practitioner. And this last one is all about how you run your team for those who are in leadership positions, because the way that you do that is what separates growth leaders the rest of the org can't live without from the ones that could be replaced tomorrow. And AI has changed how we ship and operate as growth leaders and has revealed something about the actual product of a growth team. The thing that it is really producing that the rest of the whole company benefits from, which is the learnings and the insights. And obviously we care about the wins and the rate of growth, but the way that we get there is by learning what works and what doesn't work. In the campaigns that we run and the tests that we execute, that's how we produce those learnings. But the learning is the true product. Let me elaborate a little bit more. A growth team is usually working at the optimization stage of growth, meaning the company's already gone 0 to 1. They have a working growth model. They have some channels that are working. The core go-to-market motion is in place. Your job at this optimization stage is to figure out how do we break through our conversion plateaus to take us to the next level. And much of the time, we don't actually know what's going to work. We have hunches. Maybe it's segmentation, maybe it's some of the copy changes, maybe it's UX challenges, maybe it's a friction point, whatever it is, maybe it's personalization. But a lot of times these are guesses, right? We call them hypotheses. We have data that back them, but a lot of times we're not sure. And look, if you work at a super high volume company, at a Facebook or something like that, you've got volume. You can spray and pray. You don't have to be super locked in. But for the rest of us, we don't have that volume. And so the job becomes really specific. What are we testing? Why are we testing it? What do we expect to learn? And who else in the company benefits from learning whatever it is that we find out? And the last part is the one that most teams skip. And honestly, when I was ahead of growth, I did this too. I was so dang focused on hitting our team's number that I basically just treated everything else as less important. And product would ship stuff that basically contradicted things that we had learned in other areas of the activation and the retention flow. And then, when I was working at a hybrid PLG organization, sales would end up leveraging copy that we'd already shown, weren't effective on landing pages and our paid ads. And so we were just leaving so much leverage on the table because we weren't running the team like a learning and an enablement function. I was running it just as a shipping and execution factory, scrapping and clawing my way to wins. So when you do this well, it should look like a process. The process should have 4 steps. The first is going to be ideation. You want to create a backlog of amazing ideas that could improve the KPI or the business, whatever it is you're focused on right now. Second step is going to be prioritizing those ideas. Use some framework that'll help you figure out the right test, program, campaign to run. Ideally, not from the loudest or the most senior person in the room. Third step is going to be experiment design. Writing down what we're hoping to learn, how we'll know if it worked, when we're willing to move on. If it doesn't work, who else should benefit from this information? And then the fourth step is going to be leveraging a wins losses tracker so that based on whatever we learn, if it works and why, if it doesn't work and why, compounds over time and improves our hit rate over time instead of leaving whenever somebody moves on from the team or leaves the company. And in the past, we did all this stuff manually. Now you can do most of this using your AI tools. And the hard part for most teams is going to be the discipline to actually follow the process once you have it in place. But here's the part that matters most. Once you've learned something, every other team that touches the customer needs to know about that learning, right? Product needs to know what's working in your activation flow. Sales needs to understand which of the messaging is converting better. Customer success needs to understand which behaviors and signals might indicate expansion or churn risk. And so if your learnings stay within the 4 walls of your team, you're missing almost all of that leverage. Okay, so here's the difference. Let's drive it home. The growth leader who's going to run their team the way I did, like an execution factory, heads down, scrapping and clawing their ways to the numbers and keeping their learnings within the 4 walls of their team, that's the person who's going to get stuck in this future world. They look productive. They are productive, but the rest of the org doesn't actually benefit from them being there. The growth leader who runs their team like a learning and enablement function is the one that the rest of the org can't live without. Product depends on them. Sales is going to benefit from them. CS gets better with them, and executives are going to prioritize their learnings because they're making everybody better. So they're not just shipping experiments, they're making the whole company smarter, way more valuable. So the product of a growth team is really the learnings and the enablement and the distribution of the learning. Campaigns and wins, that's the byproduct. So if you're not sure what to do, take the last few experiments that your team ran, and for each one, ask yourself a few questions. The first, what did we learn? And the second is what other team at the company would benefit from this learning? And if the answer to either of those questions is I'm not sure, you need to create a process to close that gap. You need to get in front of the room more so that you're sharing and distributing these learnings. Okay, so those are the 5 shifts. Let me recap them for you quickly here. 1 is going to be judgment over output. The most valuable skill isn't your ability to ship anymore. It's figuring out what is worth shipping in the first place. The second, curiosity over caution. The folks that are heads down building right now, they're going to be running departments in a few years. 3, surface area over specificity. Strategy is the work. Execution is the part that AI can help you with. 4 is going to be business first over campaign or tactic first. Walk in with a problem, not a solution. 5 is going to be learning over shipping. The growth leaders the rest of the company can't live without are the ones running their team like a learning and enablement function. Campaigns and wins are some of the byproducts of that. And if you got value out of this video, do me a favor and hit subscribe. I post content like this every week, specifically for people that work on and around growth teams. And if you want help applying any of this to your world in the moment that you're in, I've got 2 ways that I can help you with that. The first is my Head of Growth Guide. It is the full system that I help implement with some of my coaching clients. I'll put a link in the description below. It's essentially the playbook I wish I had when I was head of growth myself. And the second is one-on-one coaching. So if you're working through something specific and you want a thinking partner who's been there, I take on a small number of clients at a time. I'll put a link to that in the description below. Otherwise, see you in the next one.